Good morning, everyone. Welcome, board members and guests, to the Wednesday, January 25th meeting of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, Placer County Airport Land Use Commission, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, and the Placer County Local Transportation Authority. We welcome the public to in-person participation. In addition, remote teleconferencing participation is available to board members and the public pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54953E due to the COVID-19 State of Emergency Proclamation and recommendations for social distancing. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment during this meeting. After I open an item for public comment, those joining us by webinar can signal that they wish to speak by clicking the raise hand button on the middle bottom of the Zoom webinar window. If you are joining over the phone, you can press *9. PCTPA staff will call out individuals one by one who have indicated they wish to speak. For those joining us in person, you are welcome to come to the podium. We ask that anyone making a public comment state their name and city of residence. You will then have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and we will notify you when your 3 minutes are up. If you experience technical difficulties and are unable to provide public comment during this meeting, please email your comment to Solvi Sable at ssabol@pctpa.net. Board action. Because this meeting is being conducted via teleconference, all votes will be roll call votes. Board members, we may ask that you state your name prior to making a motion or seconding a motion for the record. Once an item has been moved and seconded, I will request the clerk call the roll to vote. Thank you so much. And would you mind doing this flag salute for us today?
You all please stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Okay. So, section Part C, AB 361 remote teleconferencing.
Roll call.
Oh, I missed roll call? Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
We know we're here.
My first.
Burris.
Everybody?
Present.
Cartwright. Here. Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Holmes.
Here.
Howdeshelt.
Here.
Janda.
Present.
Joyner.
Here.
Jones.
Here?
Wilkins.
Here.
All right.
Good. Okay, then. Well, then let's move on to item C. Matt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you're all aware with AB 361, the board can continue to meet with relaxed teleconference rules due to the governor's state of emergency and state recommendations for social distancing. The governor's state of emergency is set to expire February 28th, and as a reminder, beginning in March, the board will no longer be able to use the remote meeting options under AB 361. The board expressed the desire in December to meet with the hybrid option into the future under AB 2449, which is the latest amendment to the Brown Act. So the guidelines have been evaluated, and we ask the board adopt findings to hold this meeting by remote teleconference and declare its intent to continue remote teleconference meetings due to the governor's state of emergency proclamation. So we're asking for action for the board to adopt Resolution 2301.
Okay.
I'll move adoption.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Burris.
Yes.
Cartwright. Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Holmes.
Yes.
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Janda.
Aye.
Joyner.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. So next is approval of the action minutes from December 7th, 2022. Has everyone had a chance to look over? And do I hear a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
Joiner seconds.
Joiner second.
Okay. Supervisor Holmes? Okay.
Burris.
Yes.
Cartwright. Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Holmes.
Yes.
Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Janda.
Aye.
Joyner.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the next item F, public comment. Speakers have 3 minutes under public comment to speak on issues that are not listed on the agenda unless the time is extended by the proceeding officer. The Brown Act does not permit any action or discussion on items not listed on the agenda. Do we have any
Madam Chair, just quickly before we move to F, under item E, agenda review, just to confirm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
That's
missed it
okay. The
again.
agenda's fine. There's no edits or changes.
Okay.
So we can move to F.
A little nervous for my first meeting. I'm just skipping every other item. I want to move this right along.
I like it. I like it.
This is exactly what happened to me when I started running the meetings in Roseville. I was like, oh, whoops, okay.
Okay, you're trying to make me feel better. Okay.
And it's oh so much
Thank you,
fun to have
Matt.
all the past chairs telling you how to do it.
No, I bring it on. I appreciate it. Okay, then.
We do have someone,
Okay.
public comment?
Yes, we have public comment. Number ending in 6100, unmute. You are free to speak.
Hi, this is Tink Miller, Director of Placer Independent Resource Services. I hope you can hear me this time. I wanted to bring to your attention regarding the State Master Plan on Aging. I attended a meeting yesterday hosted by the Director of Department of Aging, which reviewed the plan goals, and for each goal there's an array of initiatives on how they want to move forward toward these goals. One of the goals is, of course, transportation as a critical need, as you can imagine, for older adults and people with disabilities. The plan is called Master Plan for Aging, but it also includes people with disabilities. So the initiative that they plan to undertake, which is their name for a strategy to move toward improving transportation for seniors and people with disabilities, is that they're going to focus on the CTSA program, Consolidated Transportation Services Agencies. So that would include Western Placer in our county, CTSA. So their goal is going to be to look at how to strengthen CTSA services in terms of funding, in terms of innovation of strategies for providing services, making them accessible, both in terms of where they go to provide the rides from end to end and back again, and also accessibility in terms of disabilities, and to make it affordable to all with innovative strategies integrating maybe some new ideas around how to provide those services. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, that this is something that the State Department of Aging has targeted and will be exploring and developing more in-depth activities around that issue. And we have a couple years to go on the full development of the plan. But I wanted to put it on the table for you. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate that. Any others? Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on to item G, the consent calendar, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested citizen may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Anyone want to remove anything?
Madam Chair, I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay,
Out of Shell seconds.
all right, thank you. Roll call.
Burris,
Yes.
Cartwright, Dowden Calvillo, Holmes,
Yes.
Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Janda,
Aye.
Joyner,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to item H, the consent calendar, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested citizen may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Anyone want to remove?
I have none.
No public, no public?
Nope.
Okay.
Joyner moves approval. Second.
Burris,
Yes.
Cartwright, Dowden Calvillo, Holmes?
Yes.
Howdeshell?
Yes.
Janda?
Aye.
Joyner?
Yes.
Jones?
Aye.
Wilkins?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item I, South Sutter Fair Share Transportation Funding Analysis Approval. David,
I have this.
going to take it away. There you are.
Yeah. So you have three actions today that we're asking the board to approve. We're asking you to adopt the resolution authorizing the executive director to execute amendment number 1 to a memorandum of understanding. We're also asking you to authorize the executive director to execute funding reimbursement agreements with Sutter County, City of Roseville, and Placer County. And lastly, we're asking you to authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute a contract agreement with DKS Associates to conduct the fair share funding analysis. So I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that hopefully summarizes the key points within the staff report. So in June 2009, Placer and Sutter counties entered into a mutual settlement agreement regarding the Placer Vineyard and Sutter Point specific plans. And as part of that agreement, the two counties agreed to establish a program of fair share mitigation for specific plan out of jurisdiction traffic impacts. So a lot of conversations occurred during those years there, and in January 2020, Roseville's, Placer, and Sutter counties, PCTPA, got together and formed a project development team to scope Riego Baseline Road improvements. It's a 12-mile corridor and certainly is in need of upgrades given the growth potential within that area. In October 2020, this board also adopted a project study report for those road improvements. And the project study report is an important document because it allows us to pursue federal and state funding, as well as to set up programs for local funding, should that be the case. And then in October 2021, the jurisdictions got together again and agreed to put together a memorandum of understanding directing PCTPA to establish the scope and structure for a fair share funding program. And we have been working towards that for the last year or so. So generally, this is where when we talk about South Placer, South Sutter region, this is kind of where we're talking about. So the top red line is Placer Parkway, the bottom line is Riego Baseline Road, and in between, there's Santici Boulevard and Watt going into Sacramento County, and also portions of Highway 99. The area itself will be refined as part of the detailed analysis that we hopefully will conduct this year. So what's the purpose of a fair share funding program? So the purpose is to ensure future development contributes their fair share towards the cost of additional infrastructure needed to mitigate cumulative regional traffic impacts. I mean, we're looking at, with these specific plans along the Riego Baseline corridor, of close to 100,000 people that will be eventually living within this area. So there will be a need for upgraded infrastructure. And in October 2022, we released an RFP, request for proposal, seeking proposals from consultants to conduct this fair share funding analysis. And a team was put together that consisted of Sutter, Placer, and the City of Roseville, as well as us. And we evaluated proposals, and we recommend DKS Associates to prepare the funding analysis. And that came with the concurrence of all the jurisdiction staff as part of the memorandum of understanding. Basically requires us always to seek concurrence from a project development team consisting of the staff of the jurisdictions. So where are we at now? So the cost to complete the work, which would be completed by December in 2023, is slightly less than $500,000. The consultant services are $260,000, including optional tasks, which would allow for them to assist jurisdictions after we complete the analysis at the end of this year. PCTPA staff administration, so myself and executive director and the deputy executive director and other staff, in terms of working on this piece of work, is approximately $139,000. And there's a project contingency of $99,000, and that is in there because, as you are well aware, when you prepare large-scale project studies like this, there's always something that comes up. And so rather than continually come back to the board, we felt that it would be good if we could have the contingency in place, and then as part of the MOU amendment, we would be continually seeking concurrence, from the project development team to execute additional tasks. And the MOU amendment actually says that. And so we need an amendment, and that's attached to the staff report. And then there'll be funding reimbursement agreements with 3 jurisdictions. The 3 jurisdictions plan to go to their boards February 14th, 15th. So you'll see it on the board agendas, hopefully. Each jurisdiction's share is approximately $166,000, and as noted, they'll seek approvals in February 14th, 15th, and the analysis DKS indicated should be completed by the end of December 2023. And so with that, coming back, we're asking the board to adopt the resolution, which will authorize the executive director to execute the amendment to the MOU, execute jurisdiction funding reimbursement agreements, and execute a master agreement and what's called a letter of task agreement with DKS Associates. And so we went to our technical advisory committee, and they concurred with the recommendation, and hopefully you will also concur. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions by board members?
I've got one, if I may.
bet.
So, David, where is this ultimately heading? Are they setting up something like our Tier 2 fees for future development for Sutter?
Right. So fees will definitely are part of the funding analysis, looking at a new fee program, whether it's a new fee program or change to existing fee programs. Whatever way we go, since you have existing fee programs, there'll be credits that will need to be established, a crediting process, because you can't pay for an improvement twice. So. The fee program is there. The development community obviously is quite interested in something other than fee programs. So that's why the fair share analysis will also look at the potential for other local, state, and federal funding opportunities. And so that will be taken into account. And then as part of the analysis, there is a set of tasks that have the consultant look at how we would implement this. The institutional responsibility. So would this become part of Sparta fee program? Would a new JPA be created? Would the Sparta JPA be amended to include Sutter? Those things are all on the table for things to be looked at.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public?
Yes, we got one member of the public.
Okay.
Michael Garabedian, you're free to speak.
Good morning. Thank you. I have a couple questions. I wonder if this time, if there are fees on households, if we know how much that might cost for households under the different arrangements. And I wonder if the public or the people who live there now will have a chance to vote on whether they're subject to these fees. I guess you talked about different options. The county hasn't been stellar in making sure, it's approving development before the infrastructure is there, kind of like crazy. And you have older people moving out there now very far from any old services. You have trouble making sure that the sheriff can cover that on this kind of notice without actual planning for their facilities and so forth. And so I hope this isn't another thing where we're really kind of doing catch up. And let's assume it's not. But so, yeah, I'm very interested to know in particular what the options might be and how this is going to affect the people later who have moved in now or who will move in later. And if we can get some idea what that's going to be costing them. Thank you.
Would you like me to respond to that? Okay. So during the past year, we looked at a variety of different scenarios. And as you can imagine, fees can range from $1,000 per unit to up to $10,000 per unit. Depends upon the number of units that get built. The Sutter's specific plan, has a number of environmental constraints with respect to flooding, and so how that development will occur over time and whether it will occur is something that we need to look at. It also depends upon whether or not you are developing a fee program that focuses solely on Riego Baseline Road versus something that encompasses all of the regional improvements that are forecast, that are needed in this particular area. So, a Riego Baseline Road fee somewhere was between $1,000 to $2,000 dollars per unit, if you just focus on that. If you take the whole kit and caboodle together, so to speak, it can be somewhere between $5,000 to $8,000 per unit. And it really depends upon the number of units, the timing of the units, and of course, ultimately, it will also depend upon the cost of the infrastructure, that is required. So, in addition, so he asked about voting. So each of these, so the fee program here, we will be recommending a fee program. And so it's the jurisdictions that will, we will be recommending a program that potentially includes a fee program. I don't want to jump to a conclusion just yet. The jurisdictions will need to, to vote to enact any sort of program. So the Sutter County Board, the Placer County Board, and the City of Roseville Board, the elected representatives there will take action, to do that. That'll occur sometime in 2024, hopefully.
Okay, any other questions? No, all right,
Madam Chair, I'll move
Action.
approval of the 3 items as requested in the staff report.
How to shout seconds?
okay.
Burris,
Yes.
Cartwright, Dowden Calvillo, Holmes,
Yes.
Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Janda,
Aye.
Joyner,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we'll go to item J, agreement for a sale of mitigation credits for the Interstate 80 Auxiliary Lanes project. We're asked to adopt a resolution number 23-03, approving an agreement for sale of mitigation credits with the Antonio Mountain Ranch Mitigation Bank for the Interstate 80 Auxiliary Lanes project and authorizing the executive director to execute said agreement. Take it away, David.
Okay. So, the I-80 Aux Lanes project, we've been before this board on numerous occasions. So just generally, just to remind the board, because there's some new members here, it's a project that has 2 segments to it, and it's not shown on this slide. It's to build an aux lane from State Route 65 north to Rockland Road. And then southbound from State Route 65 Interstate 80 interchange to build a new 5th lane, a main line lane, to the Sacramento County line. Okay, so in terms of this mitigation bank agreement, we're focusing on that westbound 5th lane. So as I noted, the project will add a westbound 5th lane from Douglas Boulevard to Riverside, and it includes widening of Kirby Creek Bridge. And as you can probably see, Kirby Creek is sort of, I should probably use the pointer. Does this pointer work? Yep. There you go. Kirby Creek is right in there, and it is within George Kirby Creek, which is a undeveloped park within the city of Roseville, and there's a variety of riparian habitat. It's another view taken at creek level. And so the project will have an impact of 0.01 acres of perennial streambed habitat and 0.01 acres of valley foothill riparian habitat, total of 0.02 acres. So, as with almost any project nowadays, there are environmental mitigation requirements and environmental permits. And so we had to get a U.S. Corps of Engineers Nationwide Permit 14. We had to get a California Department of Fish and Wildlife streambed alteration agreement because we're building a bridge over a creek. And we need a Clean Water Act Section 401 permit, which is administered through the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And so to compensate for the loss of 0.02 acres of habitat, we need to purchase 0.08 acres. The ratio is 4-to-1. And we have to do so at a California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Army Corps of Engineer approved mitigation bank. And so initially, we reached out to talk with the Placer County Conservation Plan. Sparta is an agency that can take advantage of that particular program. The difficulty here is our project permits were obtained prior to the approvals of the PCCP. And so in order to take advantage of the PCCP, we'd have to follow the PCCP process, and we would also then have to go back to the regulatory agencies and restart permits, which I know sounds kind of crazy, but yeah, it is a slightly different set of conditions. And so, and with that, the opening up of the ratio, the 4-to-1, could change. So, and it would also result in some schedule delay, be more expensive. So we looked at the banks in the area, and it appears that Antonio Mountain Ranch is the only mitigation bank right now that has the appropriate credits that we need. And Antonio Mountain Ranch, as you can see, is like the big green 700-acre parcel in sort of southwest of Lincoln. I believe the land is administered by Placer Land Trust. So the cost to purchase the credits is $30,000, and the funding will be provided by Sparta. The Sparta board, so to remind this board, we came to the PCTPA board in March 2022 with the construction cooperative agreement that and an upper level in terms of the cost of the Oxlanes project. And then on that same day, hours later, we went to the Sparta board and we got an allocation approval from the Sparta board for Sparta to provide funding towards the project. And as part of that allocation, the cost for this mitigation is included within it. And so the funding is provided by Sparta. We went to our technical advisory committee. They concurred with the staff recommendation, and the credits need to be in place before we start construction this summer. And just to give you a brief schedule recap, bids advertised October 31st. We open bids tomorrow at 2 p.m. Cross your fingers. And Caltrans award of contract and issue notice to proceed will occur sometime later spring, summer, and 240 working days. We should be done by July 2024. And with that, just to recap, we ask you to approve the sale of the mitigation credits with the Antonio Mountain Ranch Bank, and we request that you authorize the executive director to execute the agreement.
Okay.
And I'd be glad to take any questions.
By the board?
Yeah, so David, I'm confused by the wording that's being used. I'm understanding this is a purchase of credits, correct? Why are we calling it a sale of credits?
Well, that's the term that is used by Antonia Mountain.
They're selling, we're buying.
Yeah, right. So
we're using the word sale, which caused me to go.
it's caused me confusion too, but their attorney was quite specific on, this is the standard agreement that they use with anybody.
Sale is a noun versus a verb.
I understood, it just,
Yeah,
where it started me off was looking for the excess credits that we might have, that we might be dumping because they're no longer needed. And-
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I probably should have included a brief sentence or two in the staff report that clarified.
No, you forced me to read the whole staff reports.
Well, then there was a positive out of this.
Okay, any other questions by the board members? And any questions by the public? Okay, Michael.
I'll make a motion.
Oh,
that we
wait,
approve
we've
the
got
Michael
one. We've got one comment. Yeah, one more.
Michael Garabedian, you're free to speak.
It's okay, one more.
Oh, thank you. I don't have to click in. I'm on now.
You are
Is that
on.
right? Okay, thank you. Mike Garabedian, Placer County Tomorrow. I'm wondering about the cost of the auxiliary lane construction, what it is, and if it's paid for, who would be paying for it. I wonder again if there are fees with this, what fees might be charged to business, homeowners, and so forth. and what those fees might be. Of course, auxiliary lanes here are, it really sounds like a widening. I don't know that much about the specific project, but if there's any hope that this is going to relieve congestion, that does not happen. It's well shown. And it wasn't clear to me if you've changed to the PCCP or not. If you haven't, I think it'd be a good thing not to change to the PCCP. Highly critical of that program from the get-go. So I look forward to some answers. Thank you.
Okay, so take the last one. So we're not going to be part of the PCCP with this mitigation credit. Okay, so the cost of the project, the engineer's estimate is $32.133 million. Okay, as I noted, bids open tomorrow. So cross your fingers. Hopefully, with the market, we come close to that. Funding. The project is funded primarily with state SB1 funds. As you may recall, we submitted 2 grant applications because we have 2 segments. So on the auxiliary lane, we submitted a grant application through the Solutions for Congested Corridor program. That was part of the Placer-Sacramento Gateway Corridor plan that we prepared. And the auxiliary lane is an eligible project for that because an auxiliary lane is seen as sort of a safety improvement. The westbound lane was funded under the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. It's a TCEP, it's the acronym. And because that is a mainline 5th lane, and those of you who drive through there notice that there is a lot of truck traffic. And we have a gap in the freeway that we need to close where we have 4 lanes, but we have 5 lanes of one segment, and we need to be able to get truck traffic through, and we were able to make a convincing argument to the state, and we were awarded those funds. So those 2 funds comprise probably like 80% of the funding program. And then the additional funds come through some federal funds. What used to be called RSTP is now STBG. So we have some of those funds that this board allocated, about $3 million. And then there were also funds that this board allocated through the Highway Improvement Program, their HIP funds. And then, as I indicated as part of my presentation, we came back to this board and the SPARTA board, and we recommended that the project be included in the SPARTA fee program. So there are fees, and there are SPARTA funds that are identified as part of this project funding as well. And that's pretty much it.
Good. Any other questions out there? That's it? No?
Madam Chair, wait. Did you move the item already? No?
I was attempting to, but then I was halted because we had.
You were halted?
commented. So I'll
Ah,
continue. I will move that we adopt Resolution 2303 approving the agreement for the sale of mitigation credits with Antonio Mountain Ranch Mitigation Bank for Interstate 80 Auxiliary Lanes project and authorizing the executive director to execute said agreement.
And seconding that, I will say, David, thank you for, for pointing out the safety issue here. Mm-hmm. It is, I guess at 4:30 in the afternoon, that could be viewed as traffic calming. I view it as dangerous congestion. So I will gladly second that motion.
A motion, Dowden Calvillo, second, Howdeshelt.
Burris,
Yes.
Cartwright, Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Holmes,
Yes.
Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Janda,
Aye.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones,
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to item K, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency Marketing Plan. Review and direct staff to implement the marketing plan prepared for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, WPCTSA, to provide the WPCTSA's program and public transit services within Placer County. Mike? There
That
you
would
are.
be me, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to bring this item to you. It's been kind of a several months culmination collaborative affair with our transit operators, as well as I'd like to acknowledge our consulting team that's helped us, Trinova, which is Jean Folletta and Tom Quartz, that are online as well, virtually. But essentially, and this complements even what Tink Miller was bringing awareness to earlier in the meeting of trying to promote and bring awareness regarding our CTSA programs here in Placer County, as well as our general public transit services. So I'm going to go through and break down the marketing plan, but essentially, as I mentioned, we're really looking at the goal of promoting public transit and our CTSA programs here in Placer County. And by promoting even the CTSA programs, we're also promoting public transit, because a lot of those CTSA programs actually complement our public transit services. And I've listed those programs in the slide, and this is just actually the core programs. There are several other programs that the CTSA administers, but these are the ones that are tied directly to our public transit services. And then lastly, I want to make emphasis that this marketing plan that has been prepared is meant to complement efforts that will be upcoming and forthcoming. We've shared this with you in previous meetings regarding comprehensive operational analysis and short-range transit planning efforts that all of our transit operators, all three of them, are going to be collectively undertaking starting this spring. So that's what this marketing plan is meant to do. We've started this process back in June when our board authorized budget for us to go out and look at marketing for the CTSA and working with our transit operators. We had several different meetings with our transit operators and other stakeholders, other social service transportation agencies, both through our TOG and also through our Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, or SSTAC. Our TOG, is our Transit Operators Working Group. So we had several different stakeholder meetings, both collective meetings and one-on-one meetings, to kind of flush out issues that we see here in Placer County that are affecting awareness of and utilization of our public transit services and our CTSA programs. And once we identified those issues, we then were able to formulate themes, which then we could identify strategies that are identified in the marketing plan before you. And from those strategies, essentially, we developed a estimate of costs associated with implementing those strategies, as well as a timeline to implement those strategies. And looking at the entire marketing plan, if you look at the tasks associated with each theme, we're looking at about a 9-month implementation period for all of the strategies following implementation, assuming it gets implemented today, the plan, and adopted by the board today. And then lastly, for most of the costs, those costs are, there's not a lot of external costs. A lot of them are internal, and I'll be going through that with each task. But those costs essentially could be accommodated with our CTSA budget. There is marketing appropriated in our budget, both for this fiscal year, and we're anticipating planning and programming funding in future fiscal years as well. So with that, I'm going to go into some of the challenges and themes that we identified. That's an overview of this entire marketing plan. First off, the first challenge we collectively developed was the challenge with looking at how people can access and understand our public transit systems. And I think it's no surprise here that there's a lot of different information pieces out there. Each transit operator has their own web page and has their own way of displaying information. And so there's a challenge with some people that are either new to this county or even maybe been here for a while and just aren't aware of public transit services, or are confused about the complexity of our public transit services here in the county. So one of the things that a solution to addressing that challenge is establishing a one-stop website, or one-stop shop, we should say, OSS website, with an interactive map feature that would show the relationship between our transit operators, both their fixed route services as well as their dial-a-ride or on-demand services. And we're also integrating potentially microtransit or app-based on-demand services into this mapping system. And that would provide one location for residents to go that could provide just information on here's public transit in Placer County. There is a cost associated with that. We've looked at different vendors that would potentially produce these services, and we're looking at a one-time startup cost of around $42,000 with some ongoing maintenance fees annually. And again, that can be accommodated within our CTSA budget for marketing purposes. And then looking to establish this, it would take about 9 months. And this is something, again, there are efforts already. I know Placer County Transit has developed a beautiful brand new web page for their transit services. We're looking at something similar because if you do go to that website, there is a lot of interactivity in their map that can really, I think, be relatable to people not understanding transit, and it's easy to use. So we're looking at something similar to that. And then lastly, we do have an existing platform here in Placer County. It's called the sptransitinfo.org webpage. That is the platform or the URL that we'll most likely be using to create this webpage. And that's something that will also, again, be easy to find, sptransitinfo.org, moving forward. The second challenge is related to some of our CTSA programs that we discovered in diving in with our stakeholders, that a lot of our branding, because we have different entities that are operating or administering different CTSA programs. For example, the City of Roseville operates our mobility training and our transit ambassador and our South Placer Transit Information Center. And then Seniors First administers our Placer Rides program. And so one of the things that we thought of and seen as a challenge is just consistency among the way that information is shared from those entities regarding our programs. It's not to say that they do a bad job. In fact, they do a good job at sharing information. However, if we're going to be looking at making this easier for the public to understand and to relate to and understand its comprehensive interactivity between programs and services, we want to make sure that there's some consistent branding among all of our CTSA programs here in Placer County. And so one of the strategies and themes that we identified was looking at refreshing our existing materials that are out there right now that are released by our different administering agencies, making it consistent, making sure also that the information presented is complementary in nature to each other and clear and concise, so that people really understand that these are core CTSA programs that are meant to be interactive with each other and not just standalone or isolated to the jurisdictions that administer those programs. And so I think one of the efforts that we're going to be looking at is forming a subcommittee of our transit operators working group to look at specifically refreshing our marketing materials for the CTSA. And then if there is a need to, we've budgeted some of the potential costs to look at focus groups that could also help us to inform if our materials make sense, and also if our materials are something that is easily relatable to and is actually effective. So that's an estimated cost of around $15,000 if we go with the focus groups, and then it would take also, again, about a 9-month implementation period. The other challenge that we looked at is some limited resources available, especially to our mobility training and transit ambassador programs. And what this means is, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been some significant challenges, especially with our transit ambassador program, which was all volunteer-based, with getting those volunteers back and then getting people comfortable with interactions again, in-person interactions on our public transit services. And so same with mobility training, we've had challenges with people coming back to asking for assistance with those programs. And in the past, what mobility training has been focused on is more one-on-one individualized training. So what we thought, to maximize our existing staffing resources in our various administrative programs and also to be most effective, we wanted to start looking at targeting congregate training sites for our mobility training programs. So going out to the senior centers in Placer County, going out to the low-income housing populations and communities in Placer County, going out potentially to congregate social service transportation sites or social service agencies, or even maybe clinics, and training staff and personnel as well as clients and customers on how to access our public transit services, and looking at that as a target for our limited resources. And then second, looking at establishing clear and concise performance goals so that we can then evaluate and measure our outreach efforts. Right now, we don't really have any of those goals. We kind of just have pulses, but we want to start establishing some clear and concise performance metrics in partnership with our program administrators, so like Seniors First and City of Elk Grove, so that we can measure the success of our outreach and also understand where we may be needing to focus our resources if there's a lack of awareness of programs, or also where we need to potentially change the messaging of our programs so that we can again capture as many people's attention and activity and involvement in these programs. And we're not estimating any cost with that. That's something we would estimate with all our in-house program staff. Fourth challenge that we identified was looking at stories. Right now, I think as part of awareness, it's one thing to present information out to the public. It's another to actually hear of the success of these programs. And so one of the things that we're going to be looking at, which is, again, utilizing our existing program resources and staff, is trying to capture and make sure we document the success stories of our programs so that in our marketing materials moving forward and in our outreach efforts, we can really identify success stories of people that have no other option but to use public transit or maybe a CTSA program to get their mobility needs served in Placer County. So that's something we're going to be focusing on. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we're constantly engaging our stakeholders, which is our transit operators, our social service agencies, and the general public in this effort, and looking at this plan as a living document, looking at it as something that's guiding us in our efforts moving forward that can be adapted or, changed and revised as needed, but really looking at making sure we're consistent on meeting at least on a monthly basis with our stakeholders so that we can implement this plan effectively. And then even bring back information to the board about how we're doing with our marketing efforts. So with that, I did already talk about the budget. A lot of that budget, again, is focused and absorbed within or programmed within the CTSA's existing fiscal year budget. So we did bring this to our Social Service Transportation Advisory Council, and our Technical Advisory Committee both recommended and concurred with this plan and moved it forward to the board today, and staff is recommending that the board direct us to implement the marketing plan as it's presented. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I have just a quick comment. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the importance on the stakeholder engagement. I think that will be key to help you drive this through. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Well, I'd just echo that comment and say what a very thoughtful and comprehensive approach to looking at, the challenges, the unique, they're almost individualized challenges and tranches of riders who will take advantage of it. So thank you.
Okay, any questions by the public?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you, Tank.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Tink Miller again, Director at Placer Independent Resource Services. I am so excited about this plan. I have annually at the Unmet Needs hearings for years asked for this kind of level of thoughtful, detailed marketing plan that would really reach seniors and people with disabilities in particular, in my interest area, as well as the broader public I know people often think it's very easy to just ride a bus. Just go down to the corner and put your coin in the meter and hop on the bus and away you go. It's very intimidating, and we've learned that apart from accessibility issues, many people are just, especially older adults, are fearful. They're afraid that they won't know where to get off. They won't know how to tell the driver where to stop. They won't know how to find the right bus to get back home, so they don't embark on the trip because they don't trust that they're going to be safe. There's many, many issues there that we've learned over the years. So, and in the interest of transparency, I've been involved in meetings in preparing this plan, so I am just not only because I've been involved, but I just really think this is going to meet the need that the public is looking for, and I plan to carry this forward to those state meetings that I referred to earlier with the Master Plan on Aging Work Group on Transportation. So I want to thank staff for doing just an amazing job with this.
Well, nice compliment. Okay, so we, now that we've reviewed it, we need to direct staff to implement the marketing plan prepared for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency to promote WPCTSA's programs and public transit services within Placer County.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion by Holmes, second by Joyner.
Burris,
Yes.
Cartwright. Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Holmes.
Yes.
Haudashelt.
Yes.
Janda.
Aye.
Joyner.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Okay, moving on to item L, Federal Legislative Program for 2023. Matt?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to give you a quick update on our federal legislative program for '23. And I'll start by saying, really, the federal program looks a lot like, of '23 looks a lot like that of 2022, and we're mainly focused on funding and policy. And I'll say generally, more than anything, we sort of want to be on guard against any sort of efforts to repeal programs or anything of funding interest to PCTPA or any of our other entities. And with regards to fiscal year '24 spending, when they get into the '24 transportation appropriations bill, we would oppose any earmarked funding that would be a takedown against the highway program, right? But so this is where it gets a little complex. But at the same time, we're going to continue to support any earmarks as possible opportunity for ourselves or any of our member entities, as long as those earmarks aren't going to come at the expense of the highway program. And I think more so than anything at a federal level, we're going to continue to work to monitor federal grant solicitations. I think that's the number one thing we can do in support of PCTPA and all the member jurisdictions. For example, CCJPA's CRISI application, which we're continuing to monitor, and it went in late last year. So we're very simply requesting board action to adopt our federal legislative program for '23. Before we do ask you to take action, I will note that we are under an open procurement. We will be getting a new federal lobbyist. I say new because Sante Esposito let us know as part of this that he was going to be retiring, so he did not. Yeah, I know. Solvi and I were actually in the office talking about him, looking forward to seeing his proposal, and an email came across that I think after a lot of conversation with his family, he's decided to sort of go to the House. So we do have 4 proposals that we received. We have established a procurement committee that's reviewing them right now. We will bring that to you in March for board action.
Okay,
I'm sure.
thank you.
Is he closing his lobbying business, his son not taking over?
Yeah, Jim, as I understand it, that's what he is doing. Yeah, and when it was, I started on the 14th of November. On the 15th of November, I met with him and his son in DC. It was actually the second meeting I took as incoming executive director. And at that point in time, in talking with them, I thought there'd be a transition to his son. So I don't know more than that, but for whatever reason, they're not going to do that.
He sure did a great job for us for all the years I've been on the board. Very receptive and really knew his business. He had a great background in the transportation and the federal government.
Yeah.
So we will miss him.
Well, and we did tell him, hey, if you change your mind,
Okay. I'll write him a note.
you know, you
What are you
might
thinking?
pull a Tom Brady. You might get to the house after 60 days, want to come home. So come back. So
Okay, is that wrap it up for the federal side?
yes, Madam Chair, that's
It's an
just
action
requesting
item.
board action to adopt our program for '23.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Dowden Calvillo, second.
Hey, Joy. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't ask the public for
Oh,
comments.
I apologize.
We did it again.
Trying to move this along.
Michael Garabedian, you can unmute. You're free to speak.
Hi, Mike Garabedian, Placer County tomorrow. Glad to have a chance to talk about federal funding and our lobbying back there, the county's lobbying back there. I think that the primary focus on highway has to be balanced, and it's time to start balancing it now. The highway construction is not going to solve the problem of adding a couple 100,000 people into South County. It is going to be a nightmare unless we begin now to look at solutions, long-term, short-term. If we're not going to have a moratorium on development while we figure out what to do, then we need to start planning right now for what will enable people to move and live there without being stuck in traffic jams all the time, without people saying, why did I move here? What's wrong? Without leading to a situation where homes are devalued and the quality of life goes down because people can't get anywhere. That's where we're going. Nothing wrong inherently with highway funding, but it has to be not emphasizing that solely. It's past time to figure out long-term transportation solutions, whether it's looking again at this 1995 idea of having tracks going north through Lincoln to Butte County and so forth, a rail service like that, transit service, all of we have to look at the whole picture. We've done all this planning, all this building, and there is no transportation plan being worked on or developed. We're leaving it to the people to live there and have headaches that you aren't trying to solve. And this focus on the federal highway program is not what we need there in South County.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
You certainly can.
Thank you, just for clarification, and I appreciate the comments, and I should point out, and maybe I was too quick to rush through our federal legislative program and talking about takedowns against the highway programs. We certainly support all modes and will aggressively pursue all grant activities for all modes. And in fact, the CCJPA, and maybe that's a fault of too many acronyms, right? That's the Capital Corridor Joint Power Authority. So the existing federal grant that we are aggressively pursuing is for intercity passenger rail. And that is to support our partners at Capital Corridors to get us from 1 train a day to 3 trains a day, which will then eventually lead to 10 trains a day. And we do foresee that as one of our #1 ways to combat congestion on 80 in support of and in addition to everything David pointed out with the safety improvements on the interstate. So we fully understand the caller's comments and agree with them, and we will aggressively pursue all grant opportunities regardless of mode.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Matt, thank you, and, I'm pleased to see the very first bullet point of the policy is advocate for appropriation of funding for intercity passenger rails.
Yeah.
You can't be any clearer that, we need to have as you said, a multimodal approach to.
We sure do.
Lincoln would be more than happy to have passenger rail come up its way. We've looked at it many times. UP is unwilling, and I think it's just unfortunately way too costly at this point.
Yeah. We're about 80 years too late, maybe 100.
Yeah, probably more like 100. Okay, so we have had a motion. Oh, who made Joyner motion and?
Dowden Calvillo seconded.
Okay.
Burris,
Yes.
Cartwright.
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Holmes. Howdeshelt.
Aye.
Janda.
Aye.
Joyner.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Okay, so now we're on to item M, State Legislative Program for 2023. Matt?
Yeah, so a lot like our federal program, I'll admit by starting out and saying that our 2023 state legislative program, as well, is also very similar to 2022 with some standouts that I've called to your attention. And I do want to note as well, like with the federal lobbyist, we have an open procurement for our state lobbyist as well, just so you're all aware.
Gosh. People are moving all around.
The top bullet is the one that gives us the most pause and what I want to spend the majority of my time on, and that's the fact that there has been 2 spot bills introduced, AB 6 and AB 7, and those bills seek to align state and regional projects with state climate goals. And I would say, as an entity, of course, we are not against any of these state climate goals as well. But if you look at AB 6 and 7, and at this point in time, we have, 1 paragraph in, as far as what the intent of the legislature is. To paraphrase it, what it's basically saying is that we as an RTPA, even through local measure, if we come up with a plan of projects that we want to even self-fund and self-perform, those projects would have to be passed through the MPO, consistent with the MPO, and approved by the MPO. That's what AB 6 states right now, as best we can tell on intent. And AB 7 essentially says there will be no future expansion projects or any projects for solo occupant vehicles or improvement of, that might enhance VMT. So AB 6 and 7, what they really do is they're just a further erosion of local control. And we will work very aggressively to oppose them in this form. And so I want to call your attention to that. If there's one thing that sort of keeps me up at night, it's AB 6 and 7.
Who are the authors on, is it the same author?
It is the same author. It's a great question, and it's Friedman out of Southern California.
Of course it is.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, there was an attempt in 2022, and this is that coming back again. Other things of note, of course, I think we're all aware that the governor's budget was cut by $2 billion, and as part of that, we're going to oppose any effort to reduce transportation funding generally. Transit funding, a lot of the transit entities across the state, especially the big ones in LA and San Francisco, they're facing that term fiscal cliff because of lack of ridership coming back. Because of the impacts of COVID. And of course, our transit agencies here in Placer County face that as well, but of course at a much smaller scale, but they do still face it. And generally, we're just going to work through all of the statewide associations and collaborations to, participate and support anything we can do to address transit operations and revenue shortfall. There's no position to formally take on this, but just a matter of awareness for the board. And likewise with active transportation funding inside the governor's budget, there was a reduction and a takedown in that as well. So I would say in closing, really the big one is AB 6 and 7. Outside of that, our 2023 program will look similar to 2022, and we're asking for board action to adopt our program for 23.
Okay, board members, comments or questions? No, none of the board members. I just one comment is that it's just really difficult for all of us electeds that the state keeps demanding more development, higher densities, affordable, and all this kind of stuff, and yet no more VMTs. Don't add any VMTs. I guess how are we going to get people?
Scooters, electric scooters.
Maybe that's something we all need to brainstorm. Where are those little hover things, in the Jetsons? We should be having those by now. Anyway.
Oh, they'll probably contribute to poor air quality, so we won't
There
have
you
those
go.
either.
Any comments by the public?
No.
Okay. Do I have
I'll
a
move
motion?
the item.
We have to adopt.
There is action.
Yeah, we have to adopt the
We all,
program.
Adopt.
we're an action-oriented
Yes.
organization. Okay.
Joiner
Motion-
seconds, that's
Okay, motion Howard Shelton, second Joiner.
Okay.
What I meant is there's no action at the state.
There you go.
No, there's too much action.
Burris.
Yes.
Cartwright. Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Ohms. Howdeshelt.
Yes.
Janda. Joyner.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Okay, and executive directors.
Okay. Moving quickly here, just starting off, just wanted to confirm for everybody that we know board members Holmes and Howdeshelt are going to continue to represent us on the CCJPA. One item of note, the chair and myself will be attending Cap to Cap in Washington, D.C. the 22nd to the 26th in April. And I think Director Joyner as well possibly will be, and maybe other members as well. So just a heads up, that will conflict with our April 26th board meeting. We might have to have a conversation about moving that or potentially canceling it depending on where the agenda is. So we just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
So that would be a Wednesday, and typically we'd be heading home on Wednesday. There's a
flying back.
possibility that we could zoom into that meeting and still hold it.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah,
Not a
we
good
could,
idea.
we could, yeah, if you wanted to zoom in, or we could move it to the Friday or something,
Okay.
if you want to hold it. No, I'm just, conversation, yeah.
Maybe so we can send something out, a little query everybody.
Doodle poll.
Yeah.
Who's going to go?
yes, we have to.
Or when would be a good option if we change the meeting?
So Matt, you and I are going down to CalCog as well in March.
Yeah, I don't think it conflicts, though. I think, yeah, correct. Yes, sir. As most of you are aware, we're going to be hosting the CTC today, so that's going to be a very exciting thing. I have a presentation at 1 o'clock to welcome the meeting themselves, the CTC themselves, and kick off their meeting. So we got a little 6-minute presentation, and as part of that, we will highlight the third track project with the CTC. And then, of course, the reception starts at 5, and Madam Chair and Director Howdeshelt and myself will just give some really quick opening remarks to welcome everybody. Solvi, what are we, 140 people?
Approximately, yes.
Yep, so
nice.
we're gonna have a nice big attendance tonight, so we hope to see you all there at the grounds. David already presented out on I-80 aux lanes, and as part of that mentioned about bids being open tomorrow. And I kicked us off today already letting you know about, beginning in March, the Zoom accessibility for meetings will now be under the AB 2449. So let's close with some of the, well, good stuff and then tough stuff. As far as the current CMAQ STBG funding round, we received 18 applications, and the reason we didn't bring those before you today and we're waiting till March is because we're awaiting the results of the SACOG ATP grant winners to see how that might affect the 18 applications that we've received. We want to have that consideration before we come with our recommendations to you. So Rick and the team will be bringing those to you in March. And now about future CMAQ STBG funding, a status update, and I think most of you are aware of this, but I'll try to go through it quickly. You know, this is something that started in early 2021, so this has been going on for a couple of years, and just as a reminder, and I know we do have a new board member, what had happened is MTC in the Bay Area, Federal Highway went in and did an audit and found out that MTC was basically sub-allocating this source of federal funds in a way. They were sub-allocating it based on population, which goes against federal guideline. It's not allowable. So they engaged in a statewide review, and they found that various entities across the state, including MTC, SCAG in Southern California, and SACOG, which PCTPA and EDCTC, you know, are joined with, were incorrectly sub-allocating these funds based on population. So a corrective action was issued, and just as a reminder for everyone, that corrective action was actually put on Caltrans. That is because those federal funds flow via Caltrans. And they basically said corrective action is a fancy way of saying, you guys go figure this out, come up with a better way to do it that meets our federal guidelines and standards and all of that. And so that's been going on. And so there's been lots of back and forth, and just, you know, cutting to the punchline, where we arrived, and I participated in a meeting on Monday with Federal Highway, where the corrective action that our board members who also sit on SACOG heard the Thursday prior as an informational item was tentatively accepted by Federal Highway. So what that means is, in the past, where we used to receive those funds, you know, prioritize, select projects, and give that CMAQ and STBG project list to SACOG for inclusion, we will now do that in partnership and in collaboration with SACOG and SACOG staff. So we will be part of a competitive 6-county funding round. And so that is fundamentally different as to how we've done it in the past. The current CMAQ STBG round that we're talking about will not be subject to that, right? This will be for all the new things. So Rick, that's 27, right? CMAQ in 27?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this will affect those funds in 27. Couple of items of good news. One, we did work out, and we will get a target, and all of the 6 counties will get a planning target. And we will also have a seat on the funding committee, both at a staff level and at a board level. So we'll have the ability to work with SACOG around what the performance metrics are and the measurements are that all of these projects will be tested against and compete against one another on. So let me pause there, because this one might generate some questions.
Members, questions?
Question, comment. Yeah, so obviously by population, it's very objective measurement. Do you feel that out of this new mechanism, that'd be somewhat objective versus pet projects, preferences, more SAC focus versus El Dorado and Placer focus?
I think we have the opportunity to make sure it can be objectively focused, and that's the work we need to do in partnership with EDCTC and SACOG, so that we get to a point where these projects can compete on some measure of performance and not fall into the pet project round. And, you know, from the federal perspective, it's just always, you know, if you sit in their chair in your Federal Highway, it's never been a appropriate to, or legal basically, to directly sub-allocate based on population, because the spirit of this funds is it's supposed to be regional in nature, and you're supposed to look for regional projects, which means sometimes these sub-allocated geographies, you would have winners and losers, right? So it sort of depends on where you sit. So I do believe over time, if you look at what we'll get into the future, over time, it will look very similar to what we got in the past. That doesn't mean it will year in and year out. But that's the work. What it really means is we at PCTPA are going to have to work a lot harder and a lot more actively with our partnerships and be more engaged to make sure we continue to, get our fair share, quite frankly.
And there's lots of watchdogs on SACOG.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Matt is being very professional in how he's framing that. The reality is that this is the battlefield that's laying before us, and we need to be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the federal guidelines provide any direction on how to allocate some of these? Or is it pretty much up to the regional?
They give you guidelines on what you're not allowed to do. And then, and that's sort of part of the, quite frankly, the frustration, because this has been going on for a couple of years, and we would, and this, this goes back a while, but we would say, well, what do you think about this? And what we would get from Federal Highway, and understand, we weren't even allowed a seat at the table until 2 months ago. They didn't even recognize our right to exist, because we exist in state law, not in federal law. And so we had to fight to be able to just be heard. And frankly, well, that was its own thing. So what's happened for a couple of years is we've said, well, what do you think about this? And they go, well, we don't think about, we don't know. It's kind of like, it's like art. We don't know what it is, but it ain't that. Yeah. And so that was, well, do you like this idea? No, we don't necessarily like that one either. So we had to chip away. What we do know, and Rick's been part of the team and done a phenomenal amount of research on this, there are other MPOs across the country who have faced this similarly, and they have come up with ways to sub-allocate. And you can sub-allocate, you just can't sub-allocate on population or mode. So and this is where the work is to be done, to take the research and the background that Rick has done and others, and work with our partners to figure out what is a fair, quantifiable, performance measure that we can, distribute this source of funding based on.
Good. Yeah. I appreciate that background. Sounds like you guys are on track and keeping tabs on what's going on.
Yeah, and
we're well represented on SACOG too, and the vice chair is from Placerville, so that's good for us also.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah.
No other questions? Okay.
Okay. That concludes my executive director's report. I do want to, in your other informational items, there's other reports in there. And unfortunately, one of our staffers, Corey, came down with a stomach bug, so he can't be here today. But I did just want to point out, Corey did a whole bunch of work on that SB1 funding report that's inside of your packet. So, take a look at it. And, he's just bringing a lot of creativity and new thinking as one of our newer staffers. So I wanted to publicly appreciate him and the work that he did on that.
Okay, that's wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Okey dokey. Board directions to the staff, anyone?
None.
Okay, all right, then there are informational items available, and before we get to the end, I want to thank you all for excellent reports, very good reports.
Yeah. Madam Chair, sorry to spring this on you. We have 2 new board members. I wonder if they might just share a little bit about themselves.
That would be wonderful. Oh, we're going to put you on the hot seat.
Sorry about that. That's what happened. Although I don't think you guys made me do that, but that's okay. Just go on.
You don't want to catch up?
They already know.
Mayor, that's coming. Okay.
My name is Danny Cartwright. I'm the current mayor of Loomis, and I'm a commercial roofing person. So that's why I'm wearing my yellow shirt, because I'm going on a roof, Mercy San Juan Hospital after this. Glad to be here, and excited about the improvements to Highway 80, because I deal with that every day.
Yeah.
And And that's about it. I'm just a simple guy. I am what you see, and no pretense, and just willing to learn, and glad to be here.
When were you elected to the city council?
2020.
Okay, so same time.
Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
And
Mr. Janda.
Well, I'm just an alternate. I've been an
Yeah,
alternate on
Greg's
this
an
board for
alternate.
10 years, so. Mayor Broadway was gracious enough to take a business trip to Atlanta and allow me to join you guys for today, so.
We missed you
Hopefully I
at
can get him to
Pioneer.
take more business trips.
yeah,
like
you
that.
bet.
Sure.
That our only new member with us today. I think that's it. Okay, okay. Well, do we need a motion? The next meeting is February 22nd, 2023. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
We don't.
Okay, okay. All right. Anything else before this board?
Nope.
Okay.
Great meeting.
Great.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
You must have.